right. Thank you for joining us for this Monday weekend recap. We got a lot to go over today. UFC Vegas 49, Bellator 275, one full circle,
Whew.
PFL Challenger Series Week 2.
Whew.
One of us invested $64.99 into this thing. I ain't gonna tell you who. You'll have to wait and find out.
Yes.
And I'm sure they're feeling like a big sucker right now. And much more. But before we really get into the nitty gritty, Dominic, how are you doing on this Monday morning?
I'm doing great, man. It was a really good weekend. It was jam-packed from quite literally Friday morning until Saturday night. So it was a great week. Got to finished out my grad school class. So I'm down to the final two classes. Got to hang out with friends and family for the fights. It was just a really good weekend, man. I'm excited to kick off the first week of March. Well, I guess this is coming out on the 28th, but you guys get it. It's going to be the first week of March this week, which is crazy, but we've got big fights on the horizon. We're just getting started, heading into the springtime. Noah, how are you?
I feel good. I watched a lot of MMA this weekend. Spent a lot of money watching that MMA, betting on that MMA. This sport has me by the balls, man. And, I wouldn't have it any other way, but
Right.
sometimes you check that bank account and you just go, I'm sure there was a least costly hobby than doing this podcast.
Yeah.
Regardless, before we really get into anything, Dominic, I want to give you a chance to remind everyone where they can follow us on social media.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, a little switcheroo here, but we got to get it out early. Got to let you guys know where to find us. You can find me personally on Twitter, on Instagram at Diesely14. You can find the podcast on Twitter, on Instagram at BAJ_podcast. Come interact and engage with us.
It's underscore MMA podcast,
Wait,
right?
what did I say?
You said underscore podcast.
Oh, yeah, BAJ_MMA podcast. Sorry.
As for me, you can find me on Twitter or Instagram at ntbaker_. If you go to the link in my bio on either of those, it'll take you to a link tree, which will present you with a list of links to all the platforms the podcast on, along with those social media platforms. So that includes
But it's not limited to.
the Twitter, the Instagram, the YouTube channel, and Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcast. It's all on there. There's also a couple links for today's sponsor, Anchor. Shout out to them.
Of course.
But now let's get into it, Dominic. We start with UFC Vegas 49. In our headlining bout, Islam Makhachev gets the first round TKO of Bobby Green. I'm not even sure Bobby Green landed a shot.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't feel much different than the Dan Hooker bout, truth be told. It felt very much like the same type of bout. Islam immediately gets the takedown. His opponent basically struggles on the bottom, and then eventually Islam gets either the submission in the Hooker fight here. He uses the ground and pound to put him away. Some nasty hammer fist that felt like it was a bit of a statement there at the end. So your thoughts on the fight, and I guess, how do you feel about each guy as they move forward from this bout?
I mean, what other way could it have went, truthfully? I mean, we kind of all had this suspicion of at least what Islam was going to do. It was more so a matter, and I remember asking before the fight started, how long before this fight takes place on the ground? How long is Bobby going to last? And that's not even a slight to Bobby. I mean, this guy came in on 10 days' notice when he accepted the fight and got in here, and he just tried his best. He went toe for toe, but at the end of the day, Islam does this to not only a guy on short notice, but he does it to his last 10 opponents, man. The last 4 via finish. He's an absolute savage. He's an animal, and he is, in fact, next for that title shot. No, it was just a flawless performance. He went out there. He was on the feet a little longer than I expected early, which I was like, I mean, if you're going to take chances, probably not the guy to do it with Bobby Green. But when he got him up to the cage and got the takedown, it was just the beginning of the end, man. So what a performance for Islam. He just solidifies a spot there as a title challenger. For Bobby Green, there's absolutely no negative takeaways for me. I mean, again, when you come in on short notice against a guy like Islam, you only have so many expectations to live up to. And he's just so humble in defeat, man. His post-fight interviews are always so great. He's an amazing guy.
Because he got paid, I think.
Yes, and it was an amazing platform for him. They did showcase him a lot going into the fight with promos and whatnot. He deserves it. He's paid his dues in the UFC, and rightfully so now, to get his first main event slot. Hopefully he can get another one down the line. with an actual training camp. But for now, Islam Makhachev owns the night.
Yeah, I can't say I walked away going feeling like Bobby Green should get another main event spot after this. I feel like, get another victory or two, and then he'll be right there again. I saw a lot of people throwing out him versus Brad Riddell as a potential fight. It's a really good fight. Seems like Brad Riddell's getting matched up against everybody knocking on the door for top 15, but rightfully so. I don't see Riddell versus Green as a main event, personally. I don't think it's that caliber of fight. I mean, it's a great fight, but it doesn't quite have the star power that you would want as like your fight night main event. But, if that's what happens, that's what happens. I think the bigger takeaway here, though, is about Islam Makhachev and what's next for him. You came right out and said, title shot next. But there is still a debate going on, Dominic, surprisingly. Yeah. And, there was it feels like it's kind of been a debate every step of the way. When Islam defeated Dan Hooker in the fashion he did, we were ready to put him next after the Charles Oliveira-Dustin Poirier fight. Then the next week, Justin Gaethje has our fight of the year for 2021 with Michael Chandler, and we said, well, maybe Justin Gaethje should get the next title shot.
Yeah.
But it was with the caveat that Islam could probably just wait even for the next one. Well, instead, Islam takes a fight with Beneil Dariush. Dariush falls out. In steps Bobby Green, and he dominates him in the same fashion he did Dan Hooker. I say he gets a title fight next. But the other side of the debate is, well, look at the level of competition he's beating. It's not his best win up to this day is Dan Hooker, and that's like the number 8 ranked guy in the world. Not exactly the resume to get you a title fight. But I say in this situation, Justin Gaethje's definitely getting the next. I mean, I think that's pretty much all but confirmed.
Yeah.
So Islam Makhachev can't exactly help the fact that he's lost bouts with Rafael dos Anjos.
Exactly.
And now Beneil Dariush. I mean, he was in those fights. Yes, I know, I think one time out of the 3 times that RDA and him were supposed to fight, I believe it was Islam that pulled out. But, I mean, the other 2 times it's RDA, which no slight to those guys for pulling out. I mean, you're injured, you got COVID, whatever it might be. You got to do what you got to do. But he was in that bout, like, ready to go. His opponent didn't make it. We shouldn't hold that against him. Because he stayed on the card both times now. Gets replacement opponents. Dan Hooker, a great opponent, even on 1 month notice, makes him look like less than a top 10 caliber fighter. And then Bobby Green here, who had everything to gain from this matchup, and he disposed of him easily. Clearly, he should be the next guy, in my opinion.
Yes, thank you very much. I mean, I couldn't have put it any better. It's not to his detriment. He's done everything you can ask a fighter to do to earn a title fight. He's fighting people regardless of who it is. He doesn't care who it is because he's just going to go out and he's going to win. Hence, a 10-fight win streak, which is, I think, tied for it's like the second most in the UFC. There's a 15 from Kamaru and then 3 guys that have won 10 straight, Volk, Oliveira, and now Islam Makhachev. So he's now joined elite company. He's been sitting here waiting forever. He just added another notch to his resume. He is going to be, or he should be, facing the winner of Gaethje Oliveira. I know I saw ESPN MMA tweet out, I guess, Dana called Habib and ensured him, yes, Islam Makhachev is next for the title. Dana, thank you for clarifying.
Well, I also found it interesting that after the fight, Islam seemed to already know that UFC 281 in the fall will be in Abu Dhabi. Kind of interesting. I think those guys might have a little bit of insight there. But I think it's pretty clear that's where they're going to shoot for that title fight. I think in the fall, Islam won't have to deal with the Ramadan. I know that's something that Habib had to kind of work around. So Islam will probably fight again in the fall. Winner of Gaethje Oliveira, I would say, is next. Now, maybe we should address this. At Bellator, we had Conor McGregor in the crowd, and he seemed to be in a very good mood. He did. Very energetic. He was there from the first fight to the main event, which, a lot of people in his position probably wouldn't do, so good on him. And he did an interview with, I forget how to pronounce the guy's name. It's like Sean Sihan.
Yeah, he did a really good job.
And one of the, I guess, notes of the interview is that Conor is pretty committed and confident in this idea that he's going to come back in July
Yeah.
and fight for the lightweight title right away. Is there any chance in your mind, like even despite what Conor is, what he means to the UFC versus what Islam means, what Charles Oliveira wants, whatever, is there any chance that Conor McGregor swoops in and takes that title fight before Islam Makhachev?
There's always a chance because money talks and the pay-per-view buys talk. But man, I as an MMA fan, a hardcore fan, this would just be a gut punch, a ball kick. I mean, everything under the sun. It would just be horrendous if that were to be the case. If I'm being honest, I know even Connor was saying, "Hey, Charles, maybe you just wait 2 extra months and you can just welcome me back anyways for a title." I'm like, dude, Connor, calm down, man, calm down. This division, whether he likes it or not, it's moving on without him. That's how it works in the fight game. And so, yes, he's always going to be relevant and he's always going to have his name in the hat for a title fight. Chances of him passing Islam up, I'm going to say 0. I don't think the UFC will do it. I think as much as they love Conor, even Dana himself is probably thinking this is not going to be a good look if we throw him right in for a title fight. I don't even know the last time Conor's won a fight. It feels like it's been so long. It was March or January of 2020. So, yeah, and we know his record in the lightweight division as well. So I'm not on board with it. When Conor returns, it's going to be big regardless. But to me, no, it won't be for a title fight.
I agree. I think that a lot of people are very concerned about it, and I don't necessarily think they should be. Now, I get it. Conor, the biggest star in the UFC's history, and with the kind of pay-per-views, the kind of eyeballs that he brings in, you can never quite count him out. I think all he has to do is win one fight, and then he's going to be there.
I do agree with that.
But I don't think if he were to be put into it, and I know this is maybe hyperbole, this might come off like I'm, just talking in the moment and that it's fresh and whatnot. It would be the most undeserved title shot ever given, especially if Islam were healthy and able to fight. That's kind of the big thing. Is so much can change. If Oliveira or Gaethje win that fight and get hurt for an extended period of time, and let's say an interim belt has to be introduced, maybe it's Islam versus Conor in Abu Dhabi. I mean, things could definitely happen to where Conor could somehow step in, I guess.
Yeah.
But there would have to be a lot of things that would have to go his way. Dustin Poirier would have to be pretty much remove himself from the conversation completely, which there's a chance that happens because he seems to have retirement on the mind. And he could be, but this lightweight division's always kind of ran this way. It's the most interesting, most talent-stacked division in the UFC, but it's always been a damn mess.
Yes, very true.
Really, since Conor came into the fold, it's just been a mess. And we finally seem to kind of have, some stability. Charles Oliveira's champion. He had a great 2021, looking to continue that run in 2022 against a very valid number one contender, Justin Gaethje. But when Conor comes back, it could shake things up again. I just don't think it's going to shake things up in that way.
Yeah, I surely hope not.
If Islam's available, he's getting it next. Like, there's no way that Conor comes in and takes that title fight. I just don't believe that.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, I guess we can talk about another fight from this main card, the people's main event, the rightful co-main event of this card. Saw two very promising lightweight prospects go head to head. Arman Tsarukyan, however, made it look easy as well. One-way traffic, vicious elbows as he gets the TKO over Joel Alvarez. 1:57 in round 2. Now, Dominic, I know we were both very excited about this fight. Give me your thoughts. Was this the fight that you were expecting? And then, second question, what's next for Arman Tsarukyan with a performance like that?
Yeah, so I was clearly very excited in the group chat. I said how horny I was, in fact, for this fight.
I told you guys on Friday, he's the horniest man in Ohio. He's getting horny for some man-on-man action in the cage.
That's right. But boy, did it just not deliver in that way. But what a performance from Arman Tsarukyan. Start to finish, you said it best, one-way traffic. No, I love that so much. I put it in the tweet that we sent out because that's exactly what it was from start to finish. His grappling was on another level. His ground and pound was vicious, as it says in the title. That elbow that cut Joel right here, I've never really seen it cut that was a weird spot to have a cut, because when he would stand, it's not going to get in his eye. But when he's on his back, which he was the whole fight, it's going to be all over his eyes, which is not what you want in a fight. But man, it was just a matter of time once that second round started. Tsarukyan got the takedown within the first 15 seconds, and I knew it was going to be over shortly. So what a performance. The best, personally, I think, of his career in the UFC. He's won 5 in a row. He's 5-1 in this division in his UFC career. I mean, he's going to be right there amongst those guys in the top 10. I think he rightfully deserves someone in the top 10 next. It was truly the performance. If you're a believer in Tsarukyan, which we are, but we're also believers in all these other guys in 10 through 15. But this performance right here was a really just a statement made, and a welcome. He's not going to be welcome to the top 10, but your next fight, Arman, should be top 10 without a doubt.
Yeah, with this win, the lightweight division, man, is just like, obviously this fight didn't do much for Joel Alvarez, even though we still think he has some potential. Yeah. But for Arman Tsarukyan to dispose of him in the fashion he did, his only loss is to Islam Makhachev in the UFC.
Yeah.
And he pretty much has dominated everybody else. Obviously, this was his toughest task here, but to do that in the fashion he did, I mean, how can you not say this guy is probably a top 10 talent right now?
Right.
He needs a chance to prove that. Now, it's going to be hard because, Dan Hooker's going down to featherweight, so maybe he's going to get removed from the rankings. And, Michael Chandler, Tony Ferguson is likely being matched up. But, a fight with, Gregor Gillespie, I mean, I think that's a masterful fight. Yeah. I'm pretty sure maybe at one point you even called for a fight like that, and I said I didn't want it for Gregor because it just didn't feel quite earned yet. Well, I mean, you can't really say that now. And Gregor Gillespie's been a little inactive over the last couple of years, a little less active, I should say, than he is, than you would like him to be as a guy that's in the top 10 or right outside the top 10. I can't remember where he's at, but overall, Tsarukyan is deserving of at least ranked fighter in his next matchup. I know Joel Alvarez kind of was on the bubble there, but it just seems like stop treating this guy like he's less than what he is. I mean, he's really a top 10 talent who's just needs an opportunity to push him that far up. And I mean, the elbows were nasty. You can't we can't keep that same narrative alive that he's somehow a decision fighter who can't finish anybody. His last 2 fights, he's finished both of his opponents with strikes.
Yeah.
He's the real deal.
Yeah, and I want to get your thought real quick before we move on. I had to go, Uncle Chael, he was tweeting and he was busy last night, and he always throws out just random shit because I don't know if he realizes other fights that are in the works in the back end and stuff, but I love the guy. I have to bring this up. He said, Tsarukyan versus Michael Chandler. How does that fight play out? And I'm like, Now, I don't think that should be next by any means, but man, in the future, that is a potential matchup, and that's a pretty fun matchup. It was one that's kind of random because Chandler is a guy that is great with his grappling. He's a phenomenal wrestler, but he usually has been standing up, especially in his UFC career. But for Chael to throw that out, I just wanted to get your thoughts on it quickly, Noah.
I think down the road it could become a very realistic fight. I just don't think there is a chance in hell that Michael Chandler accepts that fight right now. Exactly. You have an opportunity to fight Tony Ferguson, you're probably going to take that one. But if Arman Tsarukyan can build his name a little bit, really he just has to get to that Islam level. If he keeps dominating people, yes, he has the loss to Islam, but it happened at a time where neither guy was really well known. So if he just keeps dominating, eventually he'll get to a point where he'll be undeniable. Yeah. So for Michael Chandler, I don't know by that time if Michael Chandler where he's going to be. He's 1-2 in the UFC. So even though he's looked damn good even in defeat, if you keep losing, eventually he's just going to kind of fall out of that mix. It would be a lot like us. In a way, it would almost feel like matchmaking someone to fight Ben Askren back in 2017, thinking he's going to be around for a couple years, and he only had 3 fights in the UFC and he was done. Right. So for Michael Chandler, I'm not confident we'll ever see that fight. I really just think that enough will shake up that it's just not going to happen. But it's interesting.
Yeah, it has.
Oh, go
ahead. I was just going to say, it has to be said. or there's something to be said for the fact that, Tsarukyan's only loss is to Islam Makhachev, but right now it looks like down the road these guys could have a collision course for where their rematch could very well be in a title fight and be a very, very massive fight.
Well, apparently it was offered for Arman Tsarukyan to step into the main event instead of having Bobby Green, and he turned it down, saying he needed more time, which I don't blame him at all.
Yeah.
Especially considering the fact he has a loss already. If he had two losses, if the one had that caveat of 10 days notice, it would be hard to really put those two together in the future, even if they were both deserving of a third fight.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
We're going to move on from UFC Vegas 49, but there was one piece of news that really came out of this card that was a pretty big deal, Dominic. And
yeah,
that was because Glover Teixeira, the current light heavyweight champion, was in attendance, and he spoke with Combate and confirmed that his title defense versus Jiri Prochazka that was supposed to be at UFC 274 has been pushed back 1 month to UFC 275 in June. And I think, whatever, the card's not happening in Brazil like we were hoping for. So Glover not too upset by it. He's just like, I don't know why, but it is what it is. So I guess less of a talking point is that fight itself got moved because it's still a great fight. Looking forward to it, yada, yada, yada. However, Dominic, this leaves... really, this card as of now is still waiting for a lot of fights to be added to it. So I decided to look. I went and I was like, okay, let's look at what fights are confirmed or verbally or signed, whatever. What fights are on this card right now that, they took this fight off. So I was thinking there must be another fight in there that's like a rightful co-main event.
Yeah.
Well, there really isn't right now. Actually, I have it pulled up here. The three biggest fights outside of this title fight you're looking at are Joe Lozon versus Donald Cerrone, Brandon Royval versus Matt Schnell, and Shogun Rua versus OSP, which we'll be talking about in a minute.
Both of them, yeah.
None of those are co-main event. None of those might even be main card fights for all we know.
Yeah.
So, in your mind, when you saw that this move was taking place, was there any reason you could think of why that might happen? Is it just simply that June card needs a main event, or is this to open up a pretty big co-main spot here in May?
So I think it's kind of both, because for Glover, maybe they are delaying it to June because maybe they're still trying to get to Brazil because it wasn't going to happen in May. They still don't even have a location for that card yet, but maybe they're trying to get it in June. Maybe they just really want to give Glover that chance to be in Brazil. Again, that's kind of my thought for that fight, at least. For UFC 274, you didn't even, like you said, there's not even really a confirmed main event. It's rumored, of course, to be Oliveira Gaethje. It just hasn't been confirmed yet. There's also another rumored fight between Chandler and Tony Ferguson that is supposed to be on that card. But nonetheless, why move it now? Like, something's in the works, and it might be announced rather quickly, rather soon, for you to make this decision to go ahead and delay a title fight, which was confirmed by the UFC. So, I threw it out in our group chat again last night, and I'm going to keep nailing this fight until the cows come home, until it comes to fruition. I need to see Dustin Poirier versus Nate Diaz in a 5-round main event or co-main event. If there's a title fight on that card, it would be a co-main slot, obviously, because it's a fight that makes too much sense. I still feel it's a miss that we're not seeing it this coming Saturday at UFC 272. Apparently, they just can't get the deal done with contracts. I'd say it's more so on Nate's side because it's his last fight on his contract. I need to see that fight. If that's paired underneath of Oliveira Gaethje, that is such a sick card. If you also throw Ferguson versus Chandler on there, then we're really talking a big fight for me. I don't really know. That's just what I want to see happen, Noah.
Yeah, and again, I think the rumor right now, based off what Ariel Helwani's been saying, is that August is looking like the time frame for that Nate Diaz versus Dustin Poirier fight. But you have to wonder, you move a title fight to the next month, and okay, maybe it's because you don't have a headliner for that month, but is that really what it is right now? Because it's a little ways away.
Yeah.
We have a lot of titles that haven't been defended in a minute. We're still waiting for Rose Namajunas, Carlos Esparza to potentially be announced.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Pena versus Nunes 2 isn't going to happen until probably August, September time frame. There's a lot of fights. We're waiting to hear about Usman versus Leon Edwards
Leon.
too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fights that kind of feel like they could be coming. So I'm a little surprised that that it almost feels like you're jumping the gun to move that fight, which that's fine.
Yeah.
You can do that. But there must be a reason for this card at UFC 274. There needs to be a reason why they felt comfortable to remove one of the title fights. There needs to be something replacing that is at least close to that caliber of a title fight. And I can't think of another fight that would fit that but Nate Diaz, Dustin Poirier.
Right.
Now, I'm still not confident that that's going to get put on that card, but I think that's what the UFC might be wanting to do right now. I could end up. Michael Chandler, Tony Ferguson's not a bad co-main event either. That could be a lot of fun, but it definitely would feel less than a title fight. While Nate Diaz, Dustin Poirier feels like a main event that's being put in a co-main spot. So I think there's a lot to come with this, but obviously there's a lot of fights that still need to be added to that card. We still got a couple months before it's to go live, but I expect something big here soon.
Yeah, I think it will be soon. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now we can move on to Bellator 275. This happened Friday. The card was a brisk couple hours, and it was done. It really kind of flew by. But in the main event for that middleweight title, that was kind of a big point for this weekend across the other promotions, Bellator 1 FC. Gegard Mousasi does it again in the first round, puts away Austin Vanderford via TKO, a minute 25 seconds of round number 1. Dominic, what went right for Gegard here and what went wrong for Mr. Van Zandt?
Everything and everything to the answer to both questions. Gegard came out, was very patient, and he was precise, and when he landed, it hurt. And Vanderford came out with a game plan. I don't even know if it was in his game plan, but I don't know if the moment was just too bright for him maybe, but he came out and did not fight his fight. He was willing to stand openly and trade with Mousasi, and we said in our preview leading in, this stand-up leads toward Mousasi. It's just how it is. So for him to go out and stand and trade clearly was not the right idea. He was getting wobbled. He panicked in and shot for a takedown. Very unbeknownst to how he usually would set up his takedowns. Gegard stuffs it, and his ground and pound to finish the fight was absolutely brutal, to be honest. Van Zandt, or I just said Van Zandt because it's on the thing. Vanderford turtled up quickly, and Mousasi put him away. The veteran expertise, he wasn't going to let off once he saw the opportunity to pounce. It was a great performance from Gegard. Austin Vanderford was undefeated. It was his biggest fight to date. He just didn't live up under the bright lights. I don't think we've seen the end of him. I think he's still a very good competitor, but it's going to be a little bit now before he gets his name back into title talks after this type of performance.
It's hard because Austin Vanderford's looked great, but his level of competition's just not really been comparable. And obviously the resume, only 11 fights, and then you have Gegard Mousasi who had like 56 or something like that. It was kind of crazy, the disparity there. Now, Austin Vanderford, again, he's looked great, but here he did look a bit overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. In a minute, 25 seconds, I don't expect him in the first 20 seconds to shoot for a takedown or anything. He's trying to set it up, but I get what you're saying about the stand-up. I just think it was, he never really had a time to even set up a takedown properly.
Yeah.
It just, you can't, every fight starts on the feet, so just because they're good wrestlers doesn't mean they're just going to shoot immediately, But it was clear that Gegard's strikes were very calculated. They were very accurate. Vanderford not able to really move his head quick enough, not able to really defend any of these punches. Definitely wilted him a bit. And apparently on that shoot that he went for, the desperate shoot, I guess he blew out his shoulder apparently. That's kind of why he turtled up the way he did, because it was just done. But regardless, I think that, nothing to take away from Mousasi's finish there. I think that fight was going one way and one way only from that point on. And while Vanderford, if that injury doesn't happen, maybe he lasts longer, maybe it doesn't go that way. But All in all, I think this fight proved that Gegard Mousasi is one of, if not the pound for pound best fighter in Bellator.
Yep.
And honestly, for the foreseeable future, you look at the matchups ahead, and it's a lot of similar tests. I mean, I'm not even talking stylistically, but if you're talking about the discrepancy in the experience, Mousasi is still potentially next. You got two big fights coming up, or one big fight coming up. But Logan Storley just won his main event with Neiman Gracie, so he looks like a guy who could be in line.
Yeah.
But then you got the matchup between Douglas Lima and Jason Jackson, and if Jason Jackson wins, most think that he's going to get that next shot over Storley. But those two guys are kind of the ones that could rightfully be next. So, Dominic, do you see either of those matchups potentially giving Gegard any sort of fits, or are they both going to have this same kind of uphill battle that Austin Vanderford had here?
I think it's a very uphill battle because Mousasi now has faced two guys where their go-to skill set was in, the grappling department. When he beat Stalter, he was a guy that has a ton of submission wins. Gegard finished him and made it look easy. Vanderford's an amazing wrestler and grappler in his own right, puts him away within a minute and a half. With his experience, he's seen it all. He's been through it all. There's going to be nothing new that you can throw at Gegard Mousasi. And, with that type of combination and him seemingly not getting any worse. I mean, he's 36. We had our doubts on Friday, but right now he still looks very fresh, very good. So I think anyone that challenges Gegard in the foreseeable future, it's an uphill battle for them. Not that they can't win, but it's just not an easy fight at all, especially compared to how they would get to that title fight.
Yeah, dare I say, these contenders, they just need to hope that he ages out.
Yeah, that's what it seems.
Because honestly, he said it himself. He said he's the best middleweight in the world, which we can kind of talk about that. And, a lot of people were talking in the lead up and in the immediate aftermath. I saw some talk of, man, I wish we could have seen Israel Adesanya fight the Gegard Mousasi of 5 years ago, or Robert Whittaker in that same matchup, like a Mousasi of 5 years ago. Gegard Mousasi might be fighting at peak performance right now. I mean, this might really be the best we've ever seen him fight at. It's hard to tell because, again, I mean, Austin Vanderford, John Salter, good fighters. But are they really the level of competition that Mousasi was fighting in the UFC or even, when he first joined Bellator? I don't know. But what I do know is I firmly think that there's an argument to be made. Gegard Mousasi is the third best middleweight in the world. Now, you kind of miss me. If you try to say he's better than Israel Adesanya or Robert Whittaker, I can't really, I just don't see that right now. Dominic, do you feel any differently? I know you kind of gave your answer away.
Yeah, he's not, at least to me, he's not better than Izzy. He's not better than Whittaker. But, man, after those two, the conversation really gets interesting. And especially with what we've seen from Gegard, what we've seen from him in the UFC, that kind of really helps. I mean, we're talking about a guy that when he left the UFC, he was on a 5-fight win streak, everybody. He didn't lose 3 or 4 in a row and get, tossed to the side. He chose to go to Bellator and leave the UFC because, truthfully, he was fed up with how he was treated over there. He's one of the most underrated fighters, it seems, in recent memory. The accomplishments that he's reached have been second to none. The only thing he hasn't gotten is a UFC championship. I saw a tweet where he's had all these belts and all these different promotions, Strike Force, Pride, Cage Warriors, Bellator, yada, yada, yada. The list goes on. And he still looks great in 2022. It's just amazing. He's aging like a fine wine, man. So, again, after those top two with Izzy and Whittaker, he is right amongst the conversation for top 3, top 5 middleweight across all promotions in the world.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, especially when you're looking at who's below Izzy and Whittaker. I mean, he's definitely up there with Jared Cannonier and Derek Brunson and guys like that. I think that he's firmly in that competition, but definitely the best of the best in Bellator. And yes, he does have a couple, again, more guys on the horizon who are younger, who are, these guys that the Bellator's really developed and brought along through their promotion. So he does have tough tests ahead, but it's not going to be anything he's ever seen before. So again, unless he starts to just get worse, I really don't see it going much different. I think he has a pretty long run ahead of him for at least the next year or two.
Well said.
In the co-main event, this was the fight that the Irish fans were telling us, telling everybody all week, you need to watch this fight. This is the biggest fight in Irish women's MMA history. Sinead Kavanagh, Leah McCourt, they go to distance, and Sinead Kavanagh gets to win via unanimous decision. Obviously, a lot more to be said about this fight, but Dominic, first up, did the fight live up to those expectations, those lofty expectations that the Irish fans were putting on it?
Well, it kept me on the edge of my seat for 3 rounds. So in that aspect, yes, but it did play out differently than how I felt it would go. Kavanaugh, we got to watch this live on the Spotify Green Room, by the way, and that we had a blast doing it. But for Kavanaugh, we were very impressed with how her physique has changed very much since she lost in the title fight to Cyborg. Her game plan was very, very smart, but for Leah McCourt, it was very opposite. Her game plan was not ideal whatsoever. She was in a submission early. That was her arm, as I've never seen an arm bend so awkwardly in my life without someone tapping. Kavanaugh just really dominated the first 2 rounds. She tweaked her knee real bad, Kavanaugh, that is, at the end of the second. Definitely tore some damage in there, undoubtedly. So then in round 3, we're thinking, okay, McCourt, if you could just keep the distance, kick that leg, which she started too early in that round, she might be able to get a finish here. But then Kavanaugh fights through. You see the Heart of the Irish as the title of this. That's because she implemented this strength. She pushed McCourt up against the cage and was able to get her back down again in the 3rd round, despite, that ligament damage in her knee. And so it was just a lot of heart seen from both of these women. A fight, it played out a lot differently than I expected, but it kept me engaged all the way through for 15 minutes. I had a lot of fun watching this fight, and it felt big, for those women, for the people there in Ireland. It got the attention it deserved.
The fight felt like a big deal due to the, I guess, cultural implications and whatnot, but truth be told, going into this fight, I kind of didn't have that much expectation for it outside the fact that these were 2 mid-level women's featherweights, and truthfully, that's one of the weakest divisions in all of MMA outside of maybe women's lightweight, I guess, but it's just not a very talent-stacked division across all the promotions. So I was kind of like, nah. Like, I really was anticipating it due to, like, how the crowd was going to be into it and how the Irish fans were really talking it up. But overall, I wasn't expecting to walk away with too many takeaways. But I got to be honest, I mean, it was a dogfight from start to finish. And, both women showing a lot of guts, a lot of heart, a lot of durability here. As in round 1, I mean, Kavanagh having a nasty Kimura on McCourt. It looked like her arm was broken. I mean, honestly, the way she was contorting that arm was crazy. We were yelling in the green room to stop it. But McCourt able to smartly fight her way through. And while she was very smart in her defense there, unfortunately, her fight IQ didn't hold up in round 3 because Kavanagh clearly had a very big problem with her left knee, I want to say it was. I think it was, I can't remember if it was the timing of it exactly. I thought in round 1 she tweaked it, and we kind of didn't know what happened. She just fell, and it was like, did she get kicked and fall? Like, we had no idea. But then I think in round 2 at the end is where it happened again, and she literally looked like she couldn't walk. Yeah. So she basically clinched up, took Leah McCourt to the ground, and finished the fight. But Leah McCourt, again, it looked like she was going to have an opportunity to finish this fight. And instead, she kind of just allowed Sinead Kavanagh to clinch her up. And Kavanagh was the stronger fighter. Even though McCourt is supposed to have really good judo, it didn't really show in those clinching positions. And I don't know how compromised the arm was. I mean, I'm sure there was a lot going on here. But all in all, not the highest level of MMA you're going to see, truthfully. I mean, the fight IQ wasn't really there. You had 2 women who already aren't exactly like the best of the best, but were fighting compromised for the majority of the fight. Yeah. But it was a very enjoyable fight because you saw a lot of heart, a lot of guts, 2 women that even if they aren't the most skilled, they went for it. And you know what? I respect the hell out of that. And I think in that way, it lived up to the expectations that it really was. This was a fight that the Irish fans felt a lot of pride in, and those 2 women took a lot of pride in winning that fight. And Sinead Kavanagh gets the win, and she does kind of, I mean, it did kind of really, I think it was a fight that kind of lifted her a little bit. Like, it again, I don't know how long lasting that impact's going to be, but at least for now, like, she does feel like a little bit bigger of a deal coming off that win and the way she did it. Now, the question is, Dominic.
Yeah, I was wondering.
This is where I'm going to segue. I'm sure you saw this coming, but Scott Coker, after the fight, post-fight press conference, he mentioned, he's like, yeah, we'll see if Sinead Kavanagh, how long the injury potentially could take her out, but I could see her fighting Cyborg in the fall. And everybody was like, huh?
Yeah.
So Cyborg versus Kavanagh 2 is the play. He didn't come right out and say, like, that's the direction we're going, but it sort of felt that way. So, Dominic, was this performance, as gutsy as it was this what you needed to see to tell you, okay, Sinead Kavanagh is ready for a second crack at Chris Cyborg?
No, it was enough to tell me that Kavanaugh's still there. Top 5. She's hanging around. She's tough out for anyone, but no, not after. The way she lost to Cyborg, she essentially almost got one punch KO'd. I mean, it was a pretty brutal loss, and what was her first big title fight, in Bellator. She's 5-5 now. She got a big win against someone who was surging in Leah McCourt. All power to her, but you need maybe one or two, definitely one more before you can get back in there with Cyborg, in my opinion. And it's just like, what are we doing here? Like, the things they they put Kat Zingano on a card next month. Like, it's not even on the main card, or it might be now, but either way, it's against number 7. It doesn't make much sense when Kat and Chris Cyborg were literally tweeting, hey, when you want to do this, you want to do it in, you want to do it on this card. So they don't do that. But now you're talking about putting Kavanagh back in. What was Cyborg just not going to fight again until the fall? Like, what is the thing here? Because we called for, okay, the reason they did the Zingano kind of one-off over here is because they're going to bring in Kayla Harrison. They want to make this super fight happen in the the spring or the summer. Maybe things went south on Friday with Scott Coker and Kayla Harrison. He's like, well, we don't have anything else planned. Let's put Kavanagh back in for a rematch. I don't agree with it. Hopefully that's not the case. And it's no slight to Kavanagh. She just didn't earn another title shot based off of this win, in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with you, Dominic, that while it was everything I've said multiple times now, gutsy, it was a great performance, a great showing. What makes us think this fight's going to go any different a second time? And how does one win?
Yeah.
Yes, she had earned that title fight the first time, but she's now 5-5 in Bellator. How is she about to have her second title fight? I don't know about that. Now, I'm going to pitch you a scenario here that's going to be very convoluted, but it might be just crazy enough to make sense for why this is happening the way it's happening. So, we heard Bellator came in with that 11th hour offer to Kayla Harrison, and now it's kind of up in the air. Is Kayla Harrison going to go with the PFL or Bellator? It seems down to those two. In the meantime, I think Bellator gave Kat Zingano a fight, thinking that there's a good chance Kayla Harrison is going to sign with them. Mm-hmm. So Kat Zingano takes another fight. Then you got the champion Chris Cyborg, who apparently his contract is in a bit of a complicated spot where if Kayla Harrison and her were to have this fight in the summer, there's a good chance that Chris Cyborg is going to hold out for another contract, because I believe her contract is up in, I can't remember if it's June or July. So she's likely going to look for a newer, bigger contract in order to take that fight with Kayla Harrison. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering if Bellator made that pivot with Kat Zingano because they're like confident that this offer would bring in Kayla Harrison. But then the complications with the champion Chris Cyborg, along with the fact that Kayla Harrison still hasn't came out and said what she's going to do yet, is maybe just making this to where they're almost planning if Kayla Harrison doesn't sign with them. And if she doesn't, then I don't see Chris Cyborg fighting before her contract is up. So I think that's why they're talking about the fall. And okay, I get it. Sinead Kavanagh shouldn't be the one in the title fight, but for all we know, Sinead Kavanagh might have fucked up her ACL or something. She ain't going to be ready in the fall.
Yeah.
I mean, are you crazy? I couldn't believe that Scott Coker was talking about her fighting in the falls. Like, I think her knee is fucked up.
Yeah.
Like, you're probably talking about a year off at least. Now, we don't know. For all we know, it wasn't that bad. But
Right.
I couldn't believe that the promoter, I mean, if that was Dana White, clearly would have just been saying, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
See what happens with the injury. Scott Coker's just planning for a title fight already when you don't even know if the challenger is going to be ready. So I can't help but feel like this is more surrounding the champion and her contract status, and that they're just prepping for her to not fight again until the fall time, considering contract negotiations maybe. Debating if Kayla comes in. If Kayla does come in and sign, they'll probably be willing to give Cyborg big money. If not, maybe they're not going to want to give Cyborg the money she's probably going to want in the new contract. I don't know.
I see where your head's at, Chief.
You do? Because I felt like that was very complicated.
No, not too. Hey, you talked us through it well, Noah. Kudos.
Okay. So let's go on to ONE FC Full Circle. That main event, a lot of gold going in here as Reinier De Ridder, the
Sheesh.
two-division champion, the light heavyweight and the middleweight champion. He was defending his middleweight champion versus the welterweight champion, Kiamrian Abbasov. And even though it was champion versus champion, it sure didn't feel like it because
Nope.
De Ridder is just proving, once again, if it wasn't already confirmed with the back-to-back wins over Lasang, he dominates Kiamrian for 3 rounds en route to a submission win.
Yeah.
57 seconds of round number 3. Dominic, your thoughts on the fight?
Pure dominance, a clinic from start to finish in the grappling realm from De Ridder. He really solidified himself as like one of the top dogs, if not the top dog in all of ONE Championship. He's 15-0. He's got a plethora of finishes on the ground. He even has some KO TKOs. And he just implemented a perfect game plan. Really just made a statement, if I'm being honest, again, he's a double champion for a reason. He had another guy trying to come and become a double champ in his own right. And he just showed that there's levels to this game. Yes, the weight classes and the size difference was there. So it's definitely a part to at least have in your mind. But still, just skill for skill here. It was all De Ridder from start to finish. And truly, like I said, it was just clinical. It really was.
Yeah, you could see it in Kamran's eyes, like in round 2. Again, he tried the tap at the end of round 2 with the bell had rang.
Yeah.
So then when he came out there for round 3, I mean, it was over. I mean, I'm not going to say like he quit, but I'm just saying he looked like he didn't want to be in there anymore.
Yeah.
He was mentally out of that fight, physically out of that fight, dominated. Reinier De Ridder is a problem, man. I mean, I don't see this. I mean, this guy, he needs to be like, ONE FC needs to be booking this guy more often because he's not taking any damage and he is like the best that they have in the promotion. I mean, he is so talented, especially in the grappling department. And he has even spoken out about his frustrations with not getting booked, soon enough and whatnot. And, ONE FC's had some iffy things with their finances in the past. Like they've kind of, basically whatever they say they're making or whatever they say they do, you should probably not take at face value. Been kind of confirmed that way. And they seem to be losing a lot of money year in and year out. But you have a guy like Reinier De Ridder who's so talented and just, dominating your welterweight champion. This guy needs to be pushed to the moon.
Yeah, I agree. I saw a lot of people actually on Twitter after Gegard Mousasi beat Vanderford later that day on Friday that, hey, we should do cross promotion between ONE and Bellator. Who's the best Dutch fighter in the MMA, world in the MMA space right now? And both of these organizations have at least shown some willingness to do cross promoting in the past. Again, I don't think it's going to happen, but it's at least something fun that would be interesting for both guys. And it just kind of tells you too how highly people are holding not only De Ridder in regards with that 15-0 record, but as we already talked about, how good Gegard Mousasi still is. I mean, I'd be
I know
intrigued.
a lot of people are interested in Gegard versus Adesanya, but Gegard versus De Ridder is that is a fight that I would pay a lot of money to see.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, sure, maybe it is playing for bronze in some people's eyes if you're playing for that third best in the world, but man, those two guys are just unbelievable right now. And we got to showcase both of them on a Friday, so you really got to kind of compare the two, and they're so technically different. De Ridder is he is very committed and very opportunistic with his takedowns and his wrestling. Gegard Mousasi is a much more well-rounded fighter, but he tends to be such a threat on the feet, and if you do take him to the ground, it's not going to be so easy because he's got very good there too. It's not as easy as it sounds. So for De Ridder here, I mean, this all but just was a stamp confirmed best fighter in ONE FC.
Loved it.
Now we're going to move on to the PFL Challenger Series. Week two, the welterweights on display. Dominic, as I mentioned on the top, one of us spent $64.99 on for the Fubo TV specifically for the PFL Challenger Series. I'm the one that's got the egg on my face. Yes, I'm the one who spent the $64.99. Look, I couldn't help myself. It's just MMA's on. You gotta find a way to watch it. I guess
it's in your blood. Yeah.
Yeah. But overall, Dominic, week two, what was your biggest takeaway from the PFL Challenger Series?
The biggest takeaway has to be that in week two, they already went away from their whole spiel in week one, and that was giving 2 contracts. Yes, one was a developmental deal, much like how we've seen with Dana White's Contender Series, except for theirs, they kind of will monitor them, but they'll have them in like an LFA or something. This one, I know you kind of mentioned.
I don't know. I don't know what it is. I mostly guessed. I have no idea.
Yeah. So I don't know if the PFL is going to still kind of have an umbrella over which one was the one that got the developmental again?
Chris Mixon.
Okay, so Mixon gets the developmental contract, so not the straight up, hey, you're in the PFL. So are they going to put him on like prelim cards for some of their like regular season events that they do? Or are they going to umbrella him and keep him in these LFAs, these cage furies, so on and so forth? I don't know. But he did have a very good performance. I know his knockout was vicious. His combination was very crisp, very fast, very precise when he put away Nathan Pierce in the second round. So I'm not opposed to him getting an opportunity. Again, at the end of the day, the PFL is number 3 here domestically behind the UFC and Bellator. So they are still trying to not only get older talent that have big names already, but they are trying to mold younger guys as well. So I'm fine with a developmental type deal here. I'm okay when the UFC does it typically. And he did put on a really good performance. So that was honestly the biggest takeaway for me was that, again, after only their second week, they kind of steered away sort of from that one contract thing that we talked about so much last week.
Yeah, the more of the holes of this concept are kind of shown through
already.
So this is why I said I have egg on my face. I mean, you spend that much money on the PFL Challenger Series, you're going to get burnt no matter what. But I'm just my point is there was just a lot more things about like the fights themselves were pretty fun. I mean, every fight ended via finish.
Yeah.
I mean, the third fight was a bit brutal. The eye injury was disgusting, but we'll talk about that, I'm sure, here in a minute. But more from a concept, I'm kind of looking at this now, and I'm just like wondering, to the PFL, the people in charge, what is the point here? Because it's very clear what it should be. Bring in top prospects, give them a platform to showcase their skills, right?
Yep.
Contender Series has been great for that. It's been way better than it's essentially been the replacement for the Ultimate Fighter, which I know is still around, but nobody watches the Ultimate Fighter anymore. So now they watch the Contender Series, and that's where guys get that platform. They get that showcase. You get those contracts, and then you end up on, I mean, all these cards that the UFC have a lot of eyes on them usually. So it's been really good for the UFC to have that. But for the PFL, I'm not quite seeing the value yet because you put it on Fubo TV. And at first, week one, I gave it the benefit of the doubt because they streamed the first episode on MMA Junkie's YouTube channel. And also you would get a 1-week free trial of Fubo. But then week 2 on, it's just going to be on the Fubo Sports Network. And I'm like, okay, so who's really getting, like, these guys aren't really getting a platform here. And maybe this is just a starting point. It's maybe it was the only place offering them a decent deal to host these fights on their network. But if the whole point is like trying to bring more eyes to these prospects that you want to build up, who has Fubo TV? I don't think many people do.
Right.
I'm now one of them. But
Yes.
And my buddy Kevin is a big investor in Fubo.
Yeah.
Truthfully, like, that's a big strike. That's a big red flag right there. Like, you're not really getting more eyes on your product or on these fighters. And then back-to-back weeks, I'm questioning the decision-making here of who's getting these contracts. And I'll explain why. Last week, I can't even remember the guy's name who got it last week, but he had that great, flying knee knockout. And that was a great highlight reel for an otherwise kind of uneventful night of fights. The other fights were kind of iffy. That was like the big standout moment. But clearly, your main event, and now I'm forgetting his name, the LFA double champion, Josh Silveira, he was clearly like the best, most like the prize prospect of those 4 fights. And he had a dominant showing, but it was like just not the best fight in the world. So he didn't even get brought to the final 2 because I guess the celebrity panel select the final 2, and then the celebrity panel has a vote. The fans have a vote. If they line up, that person gets a contract. If they don't, Ray Sefo gets to decide who gets a contract. So you miss out on Josh Silveira, who's going to probably get signed by Bellator to UFC like immediately. That guy is a stud. And then this week, Jiri Al-Salawi, who was in the main event, he's the one that got the full contract. Good decision there. He's the Brave CF champion, or the former Brave CF champion. That's a pretty big promotion in the regional circuit, but he's going to be in the 2022 season. Good on him. But then you got Carlos Leal down there, who's another LFA champion, who had a round 1 56-second finish of Corey Cuppy, who I know he was one of the weaker fighters on this card, but clearly Carlos Leal should have been given a contract.
Yeah.
That guy is another really good prospect. But instead, the final 2 is Al-Salawi and Chris Mixon. And yes, Chris Mixon had some really good combinations in his fight. But with that win, I believe he's only 2-1 or 3-1 now professionally.
Very green.
Yeah. So very green. So that's why, yes, a developmental deal is good for him. But this kind of makes me think this whole concept where you're doing one division on this night is just flawed, because not all prospects are created equally. So you do one division each night, and it's like, okay, well, the best welterweight on here is either Al-Salawi or Carlos Leal in terms of who the best prospect is right now. And one of those guys doesn't get the contract on the night you give out 2. It feels like you're just not giving the right guys the opportunities. The one thing about the Contender Series is they mix up who's on the card. It's not just one division.
It's all over the place.
It's all over the place. So, yes, if you took out every fight in that last season of the Contender Series that was in the welterweight division, I'm sure there might have been a guy who got a contract who I would put below a guy who didn't get a contract. But it doesn't feel that way because you spread them out throughout the season.
Yeah.
Here, it's just, I don't understand really what's going on here. And then, I mean, you get the contract to Al-Salawi, and then Ray Sefo pulls a move that would make a young Dana White back in 2005 bring a tear to his eye.
Yeah.
Where he decides that we're going to give Chris Mixon a contract too. And, not quite enough, nobody really there. So there wasn't the ovation that we got for Stephen Bonner and Forrest Griffin. But again, it was a fine watch. I sat there and watched it, but I just went, what is really the point? What's going on here?
Right.
And the celebrity panel's starting to annoy me a bit. I mean, Tyron Woodley is the only guy of the 3 who probably should be there, and he's the one that's the least interested in being there. While you got Ray Lewis and Jeremy Piven, who I like both those. I mean, Ray Lewis, Hall of Fame linebacker. Jeremy Piven, he's an actor that was in the show Entourage, which I love that show. and both seem to be fans of MMA, but the problem is that they keep trying to force them to like talk about the technical side
Yeah.
of the. They just don't really. It's kind of like us talking about the technical side of sport. We've never trained in MMA. We don't know that stuff, and they just kind of don't really get it when they're talking about it. And they both seem to be invested in being there, but again, I mean, Jeremy Piven's not even there. He's being Skyped in the whole time. He's not even there. But I know Ray Lewis is like an investor, I believe, or someone in the product. So it's just, I just walked away going like, what are we doing here? Like, what is this? What's going on? I'm not seeing where anybody is gaining anything from this show.
Right.
But I can't deny that, like, I'm still going to keep watching. I paid the fucking money for it.
Yeah, you're already in,
Yeah, next week is women's lightweight, which I am so interested to see how that's going to go. And I thought the celebrity panel was supposed to be like a revolving door of celebrities. So is next week going to be 3 different people? I don't know. I guess I'll have to tune in to find out.
They're really leaving you on the edge of your seat, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I'm ranting about something that I kind of like. It's just so flawed. And for PFL, who have prided themselves on doing things different from the UFC, from all the promotions, they try to think outside the box more than your average promotion. Here, they're missing the mark. They're like they're doing things different to a detriment of itself, and that it's such a shame because this really could be very beneficial for them. But I will just say, Jiri Al-Salawi looked fantastic. Got not a flying knee KO, but a KO to the face with his knee, and he looked fantastic, and he deserved that contract. Chris Mixon again looked really good. I'm not opposed to him getting a developmental deal. I think the PFL needs to really wonder if like this whole one contract and episode thing is going to be. I know they went against it here, but are they going to do that moving forward? I mean, they probably should consider it.
Yeah.
So, Dominic, did you have any other final thoughts about PFL Challenger?
No, I mean, you really were very intellectual, and I enjoyed listening, and I hope everyone else did as well.
Thank you. Now, we have more on some of the fights from this weekend, but before we get into that, we have some fight announcements to talk about. Just a couple old man fights, Dom.
Yeah.
It's been an interesting debate in the community for a while. We've had our back and forths on old man fights. Well, ONE FC and the UFC decided that they both wanted to put an old man fight on. And ONE X, which is coming March 26th, we'll see 2 Japanese MMA legends in Shinya Aoki and Yoshihiro Akiyama. That's right, Sexyama is back. While in the UFC on May 7th, UFC 274, we will see a rematch between Ovent St. Preux and Mauricio Shogun Hua. Any interest in either one of those bouts?
I'm intrigued. Yeah, I mean, hey, if they still got the fighting spirit left in them, then I'm all here for it. Obviously we don't know as much about the ONE championship fighters, but for Akiyama, we have seen him for years, especially. He's been in the UFC, he's been in there with prominent names. So for him to still get a chance here against Shinya, and it's on a big card, right? At the end of the day, it's one of the biggest cards that ONE has ever done, probably the biggest. So they're still going to get a bit of a spotlight at the tail end of their careers. It's good for them. OSP and Shogun, I was under every impression that Shogun was retired. I don't know if that ever was even confirmed, but I really thought it was a thing. But apparently it's not. They're going to run it back between him and OSP. They had a really weird fight that first time. So here we are again. It's going to be on that May 7th card that we talked about earlier. It's one that I didn't see coming. OSP's been experimenting with heavyweight. I guess he's back down at light heavyweight for this one. It's interesting. That's what I got for you.
Yeah, Shogun, who was never confirmed to be retired, but I believe after his loss to Paul Craig, I think Dana said in the press conference afterwards that he was going to have a talk with him, kind of like the Donald Cerrone talk or the Chuck Liddell talk or whatever. Which those talks don't really seem to be making guys retire very much. Just it seems like he's having a very iffy success rate on those talks. Yeah. But Shogun's back. OSP. I mean, what's left? The ONE FC fight's like kind of interesting because again, like it's a card that is meant to be like it's the 10-year anniversary card, so it's there's a lot of remembrance of the past. So you get two
Yeah.
Japanese legends here. That feels a bit fitting. We'll see how the fight actually goes. I'm not super confident it's going to be a very good fight, but I like both those guys. They're legends, so why not? OSP versus Shogun 2. I mean, why? Like, why are we even doing this? I guess it's better than having either of those two fight like a young up and comer,
True.
in that way. But the first fight, I don't remember being all that good, and now they're booking them here again. You got to think this is Shogun Hua's got to be coming up on the end here, right? I mean, I think this is the first time we've seen him in a year and a half when this fight takes place, and last time out didn't look all that great with Paul Craig. In a rematch, the last time they had fought went to a draw where Shogun looked fantastic, but that was like a year before that, so
Yeah.
it's got to be close to the end for Shogun. But I mean, obviously he's a legend. Like you gotta tune in, But
Yeah.
I'm just not expecting much.
That's the best way to put it.
Also on that card, May 7th, UFC 274, is a fight I am excited about. And that's Brandon Royval versus Matt Schnell in the flyweight division. Raw Dog is back, Dominic. Matt Schnell, man, I don't know the last time he fought, but it's been a while. He was supposed to be on our card. Was that UFC 271?
Yeah, two weeks ago.
He was supposed to fight Alex Perez. I believe Perez missed weight. Matt Schnell declined to take the fight, and rightfully so. So now he gets put in a bigger matchup, I would say, with Brandon Royval. I mean, no disrespect to Alex Perez. He's great, former title challenger. But I would say where they're at in their careers right now, Royval is the bigger fight. And this has pretty big implications to it.
Yeah, I love everything about this fight. It should be a really fun fight. I feel for Matt Schnell. He had that, it felt like all of 2021. He was booked 8 times with Alex Perez. Never happened. Then we got as close as ever 2 weeks ago. Perez misses weight, and we still don't see the fight. Thank goodness that the UFC is just like, you know what? This fight's just not meant to be. It's okay. We'll part our separate ways. For Royval, he's still looking to really stick in there because he's right there, man. He really is. But he had those 2 faltering moments, but he still looks good in every fight. Here he is again. He's fighting back a little bit, but it is a fight that makes sense. Schnell is actually really good. I think he's kind of slept on for this division. He's got his wins, he's got his losses, but both these guys, in terms of their styles, I think it's going to be a really fun fight. Royval's never been in a dull fight. Schnell has a lot of submissions, but he's got really crisp boxing as of late too, so that's going to be a very fun scrap for the flyweight division.
I like it. Now let's go ahead and move on to some other fights, the rest, if you will, of the action that took place this weekend. Back to UFC Vegas 49, a big topic of the night was judging, Dominic, and 2 fights on our main card. One probably more controversial than the other, but we saw 2 decisions that were very close, very close fights. The community kind of split on them.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get your thoughts on both those. So Priscilla Cachoeira in the fight of the night gets a unanimous decision win over Ji-Yeon Kim. And then the opener of our main card saw Arman Tsarukyan get a split decision win over Gregory Rodriguez. Did you see the fight the same way as the judges here, or were you just give your thoughts on both fights and kind of both judges' decisions?
Yeah, first and foremost, both fights badass. I mean, but either one could have had fight of the night, and you wouldn't have heard me complain about either one. They were both very good fights. Petrosyan Rodriguez really had a lot of big moments, it felt like, in that fight. But Petrosyan was constantly moving, constantly landing shots. He's almost got finished twice. He was in like the
Sulu stretch.
Yeah, his knees all the way back behind his neck and shit. My whole body would break if I tried to do that with me. But he escaped that. He was in a rear naked choke, I believe, and escaped that one. Round three in both of these fights was absolutely insane. And truthfully, probably it came down to round 3.
Did those submission attempts happen in round 2 or round 3?
One of them happened in round 3. I don't know if both did.
I thought they both happened in round 3. I'm pretty sure. That's when he threw the head kick that busted up Petrosyan's nose. Okay,
it was. But yeah, again, the round 3s were insane. The judging, so for Kim and Cachoeira, this is where you and I really differed a lot too. So I did score it for Kim rounds 2 and round 3. Her output was insane. Her volume was insane. She was landing more accurately. But because I scored round 1, obviously, for Cachoeira. But round 3, I saw where essentially the judges switched and flipped to Priscilla to get the decision, because she came on very strong that last probably minute to a minute and a half. She kept throwing elbows. Like she was like, I'm not even throwing punches anymore. I'm just going to swing elbows. She cut up Kim real bad, was hurting her very badly. Brutal shots. I don't know how Kim even survived it. So that was just an insane last minute and a half. I was shocked that it was unanimous, however, due to that output. I know Kim nearly doubled Cachoeira in terms of like strikes landed. So I really thought, well, this is definitely a split as well, because if Petrosian and Rodriguez was a split, there's no way this one's not a split. Well, no, it was unanimous for Cachoeira. So again, it came down to that final minute for me. I was okay with either woman winning, just like I was okay with either Petrosian or Rodriguez winning. So I didn't really see too negatively on either decision. I know you did for the women's fight, which I'll let you touch on, and I know a lot of people did in general for that women's fight in specific. But for me, both fights were a treat. I had a lot of fun watching them. Judges are always going to be iffy, but still, I feel like in both fights, either fighter could have won.
I will agree with you in the Petrosian Rodriguez fight that was definitely the case. I actually scored that one. So weirdly enough, both fights, while each fight's different, and it's comparing it's not really fair, but you saw two different judging criterias in each fight. Petrosian got the win over Rodriguez because he was the more active striker, the more volume striker, while Rodriguez had bigger moments, more powerful shots, and had, again, he had multiple submission attempts. I scored that fight for Rodriguez, actually. And Petrosian got the win. But I wasn't upset about it because I kind of understood that one. I was like, okay, that was very close. Like the first round, I thought it felt like Rodriguez was winning, but then you look at the striking stats and like most of the shots Rodriguez was throwing weren't landing.
Right. Then
we get to the Cachoeira Kim fight where I truthfully I don't really understand. I'm just going to be honest, because I did score round 1 for Cachoeira for her aggression, for she had a couple good shots. I mean, she was missing a lot, but she was more active. Or not more. She was more aggressive.
Yeah.
And did land a couple more powerful shots, while Kim wasn't very active in that round.
Right.
There was a lot of missing strikes. You know, the whole invisible woman was getting beat up in the middle, you know. So first round was kind of whatever. Then round 2 and 3, this fight really picked up. I mean, both these fights, like you said, fantastic. And I got to give all 4 participants credit for going to war here. Unfortunately, I just think the decision ruined this Cachoeira Kim fight for me, because rounds 2 and 3, I thought Ji Kim did a great job of striking at distance. Cachoeira, again, very aggressive, went for it. And I respect the hell out of her for doing it. I mean, you go for it. She felt like she was down in round 3, and that's why she fucking went for the kill. And yes, she was throwing crazy elbows, but I'm just going to say it, like, defending punches with your face isn't really defense. And she was getting peppered the entire rounds 2 and 3. And while I understand not all strikes are created equal, just like I said about prospects earlier. So, you know, you look at, that's why I don't love it when people use striking stats as a means for their argument, where Kim outstruck Cachoeira 2-1, but it doesn't always tell the story of the fight.
Yes.
However, I completely disagree with the assessment of round 3 that Cachoeira somehow, yes, the last minute and a half, she really put her foot on the gas and did land some nice elbows, had Kim hurt. But are we forgetting the moments Kim had in those 2 rounds as well, where she had Cachoeira stumbling? And not to mention, I mean, again, is it really fair to say this? But I mean, look at their faces afterwards. Cachoeira got lit up for rounds 2 and 3. Never dodged a punch, never did anything. I think that people bought too much into the moment. It was an exciting moment. Cachoeira really fighting back in that last minute and a half. But guys, this isn't a Hollywood movie. You don't score a fight by someone, how much heart someone shows or how aggressive someone is. Ji Kim dominated this fight in rounds 2 and 3. and she was the clear winner. I think it's crazy to give Priscilla Cachoeira this fight. Crazy. I think there is a better argument for 30-27 Ji-Yeon Kim than 29-28 Cachoeira. I can't believe it. I was shocked at this fight, and I'm gonna throw the word out there, Dom. I'm gonna do it.
This is rare. This is rare.
I never say this. This was a robbery. By all intents and purposes, this was a robbery. Again, I think a lot of people watching this fight, if you go back and watch it again without that emotional investment in the fight, I think you will see Cachoeira misses a lot in this fight. And Ji-Yeon Kim is very consistent in her attack. Now, I get it. It's not the most exciting attack. She's striking at range. Not all of her strikes are necessarily the most powerful of shots, while Cachoeira was throwing fucking crazy. But let's be honest. Priscilla Cachoeira is not a very good fighter, and that's why she fought the way she did. She was very aggressive because she didn't have a real attack. She didn't have a real means of getting inside and getting that attack. Now, she did land some good shots, especially in round 3. But even some of those elbows weren't even landing. And again, Ji-Yeon Kim stumbled Cachoeira in that round bad. Had her hurt bad because, again, Cachoeira was literally dodging punches with her face. That means she wasn't dodging punches at all. I cannot believe that the judges scored this fight for Cachoeira. I think it's a travesty. And I'm really more shocked that fans are I'm really not shocked that the fans are split because, again, I don't think people watch this fight like super closely again. It was a whatever fight and going in. It's Priscilla Cachoeira, Ji-Yeon Kim. Obviously, the fight ended up being awesome, and you probably were kind of glued to the screen. But most people don't really score a fight live like, maybe we do or, those judges do. So I think, again, it's a lot of people getting invested in Cachoeira's kind of comeback. And I think they liked her plan of attack better. It's more appealing to watch someone go for haymakers and kill punches than someone who stands on the outside and peppers you with there's a dog barking.
I heard that.
It's just more exciting to watch that kind of style of fight. That's completely why anybody scores this fight for Cachoeira. You can't change my mind. This fight was a robbery, 100%. Ji-Yeon Kim got robbed. Anybody who bet on Ji-Yeon Kim got robbed. It was just a tough night to be in Ji-Yeon Kim's corner.
Yeah, I will say I love your point of how you said both fights very inconsistent in terms of the way the winners were scored, because you look at, Petrosian won his fight because of he landed the more shots, more precise, quote unquote, just the volume, more active. But then you look at the women's fight, it was the complete flip, where the more aggressive, the bigger shots landed, but the more active and more accurate, more strikes landed for Kim, ended up losing the fight. So that is, I think, just the most valid point of all in this whole discussion, is to look at, if we're going to do the judging, consistently across the board, it needs to be that way for every single fight. And you have these two where it was the complete opposite. So that is a fantastic point.
And, I say that, but then I personally scored it inconsistently.
Exactly.
I scored it for Gregory Rodriguez. Now, again, different fights, and I wasn't upset at that first fight. I was like, wow, okay. I was surprised that Petrosian got the win. I was, but I didn't feel all that, bothered by the decision. But something about that Kim Cachoeira fight just felt like, that I just can't get past that. And I was kind of surprised at how many people were, like, when I sent it in the group text and your response was really, I was like, oh boy. I was like, I thought that, like, for sure everybody was going to be on the same page on that one. And I thought you were going to say you scored it for Cachoeira. And that would have been a very interesting discussion. And not like, I'm not trying to, talk down anybody who scored this fight for Cachoeira or, wanted to see her win. I understand, like, when you said, like, the reason why. Yeah. I get it. I do. I just don't think you should have people in that position who are capable of being swung in the direction by that moment. Like, again, it was a moment, people really buying into it, but I don't think that's not how you should judge a fight. So for fans at home saying they feel like that's fine, whatever. They say they don't actually, our opinions don't really matter. So, but the three judges to all three scored that fight for Cachoeira. And I know you're like, I'm surprised it was unanimous. It doesn't matter because if two of the three judges scored for Cachoeira,
still loses.
That's too many in my opinion.
Right.
So, obviously this is more split than I was anticipating. So it's like, I'm not going to sit here and have a call to action to remove these judges, but I mean, it was an inconsistent night. But again, I kind of scored it inconsistently myself. So, I mean, what do I know?
And basically what this means is we want you all to comment below and tell us, who did you score both these fights for?
I mean, I think it definitely makes me rethink, and we'll probably talk about this on Friday for the nosebleeds. Definitely makes me second guess betting on a winner by decision. I picked Andre Arlovsky to win by decision, and that was a split.
Yeah.
And Jared Vandura had no business winning that fight, and some judge scored it for him. It's just stuff like that. It definitely makes me second guess that moving forward, but luckily I did not do that here, so that did not add to the anger. But not the best betting night in general, so maybe that didn't help anything. Anyways, let's talk about some bright spots on this card.
Yeah.
We ended our prelims, Dominic, with Ignacio Bahamondes, the 24-year-old prospect, getting the submission win over Rongzhu, who's also only 21 years old. Also rocking the pink hair. I thought it looked really nice there.
It did look good, didn't it? Yeah.
He got that submission in round 3, a minute 40 seconds in. I believe it was a Bravo choke. So, Dominic, Bahamondes, the striking specialist, the guy who had one of the KOs of the year last year, gets a submission win. What are your thoughts on him?
The first submission win of his entire career, Noah, and what a moment for him. It was his fight from start to finish. He looked really good, very composed, was landing very precisely, very accurately. Rongzhu, known to be more of an aggressor, and he just couldn't really click it in this fight, truthfully. Bahamondes was just one step ahead the whole time. In round 3, Rongzhu had to go balls to the wall and try and get a finish. It ended up being to his detriment. Bahamondes was able to capitalize on an opening and pull off that very impressive submission. So a great performance by the young 24-year-old, coming off of the biggest moment of his career last year. Now he gets it again. He makes it 2 wins in a row. At only 24 years old, 6'3", tied for the biggest man in the lightweight division with Joel Alvarez, who was also on this card. But yeah, he got the job done, and he looked damn good doing it. It was a very impressive performance. And for Rongzhu, 21 years old, he's 1-2 in the UFC. There's still potential there, but this night belonged to Bahamondes. And as of now, the ceiling, I believe, is a bit higher for Bahamondes as well.
Yeah, Rongzhu needs to move up. He's only 21 years old, and he's already struggling to make lightweight. It's only going to get harder as he gets older.
What was it, 4 pounds, you said?
I think it was 5. Or I guess 4, because he was 160 pounds. He got 156. 4 pounds over. He needs to just go up. It's not going to get any easier as he gets older. He's 21 years old, and he can't make 155 pounds. You're just not a 155-pounder. That's just
right.
That's the story there. But yes, Ignacio Bahamondes looked fantastic. Moving on from that, Terrence McKinney getting the submission win over Faraz Siam. A lot of submissions on this card. And also in the first round, 2 minutes, 11 seconds in, we knew going into this fight how explosive that Terrence McKinney could be. If you just go to his Wikipedia page or his Sherdog page, you can see that. All these first round finishes. Obviously, we'd only seen 7 seconds of him in the UFC, if you don't count the Contender Series where he actually lost via knockout. I believe that was the Sean Woodson, I want to say. So, interesting.
He's a stud, too. Yeah.
But so much as that, just a glance at the guy's history, tell you how good he can be. And, it might tell you a different story than what this fight really showed. I think he's gotten a lot of credit for his knockout power, which is very, very powerful, very explosive, very fast. But Dominic, his background really is in the wrestling and in that ground game. And that showed here. And I was surprised that he was able to do it so seamlessly against such a defensively sound fighter as Faraz Siam, which I thought it was great matchmaking. I really did. Even though McKinney kind of ran through him here and made it look easy. Ziam is, while not exactly put it together all offensively, I think. I think he still has some work to do there. Defensively, he's been a very sound fighter. And you're going against this guy that just shoots out of a rocket and is immediately like looking for a finish in round one.
Right.
And Terrence McKinney gets it done again. Funny moment on the broadcast where Michael Bisping said that Ziam was fine in the choke. He said he's fine. He's not going to go out here. Yeah. And then he just tapped immediately. So that was kind of funny. There was a couple moments like that for Bisping. It was kind of a iffy night, at least in that way, where he kind of said something, then a couple moments later it was like the other thing came true. So it was kind of tough there. But Terrence McKinney looking like another stud prospect for his lightweight division, Dom.
Yeah, I mean, there it is right there. Another prospect for 155. This weight class is so stacked, and it just continues to add talent to it. Terrence McKinney, this was like a performance you wanted to see, though, because what 7 seconds show us? We know you got the power, right? We know that, but we got to see your full game. And for him to not this fight really didn't even take place on the feet because he missed the shot. And then he went
for a left hand that kind of whiffed. And then he just sort of like fell. Yeah. And then they kind of, I don't know.
He was like over top of.
It was a bit of a sprawl. And McKinney ended up on top.
And it was seamless from there on out on the ground. He really got to show that skill set down there. All 12 wins that he has now are via finish. 11 out of 12 in the first round. This guy is exciting on the feet. He's exciting on the ground and a legitimate now prospect for this lightweight division, 2-0 in the UFC.
Speaking of prospects, we move back to Bellator 275, Dominic, and the younger brother of Zabit, Kassan Magomedsharipov, at just 21 years old, is now 3-0, I believe, in Bellator. He gets the decision win over Jose Sanchez. I think Sanchez lasted a lot longer than people thought. But the story here, the young Magomedsharipov looking like just another one of these Dagestani killers, right?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, too, with him and Zabit both. It's not just that wrestling. Like, yes, that's the bread and butter. They can go to that and look amazing throughout a fight, but they're still so good on the feet, too. And that's what separates those two from a lot of these other, Dagestan wrestlers. So for Magomedsharipov, 21 years old, 7-0, I think 4 or 5 fights via finish. This was pure dominance from start to finish for the most part, outside of the early bits of round one. It was all him, and a very impressive performance with that name value. Zabit in his corner, by the way, very nice to see. Bellator is going to more than likely look to capitalize on that name and shoot him up as fast as they can, which I can't blame them.
They might take it slow, though. They've done that with some of their prospects before. They're kind of sometimes they're a little inconsistent on how fast they push people. Kassan's only 21 years old. There's no need to get this guy. Take your time. I understand here he was like a minus 1,200 favorite, and that's the Bellator thing that they do a lot of times. I don't blame them for doing it because they bring these guys in so young, so green. You got to just give them some experience before they're ready to fight the best of the best. I mean, I believe Kassan is a bantamweight, I believe. So, a lot of talent in the bantamweight division in Bellator, and really bantamweight is kind of it's sort of surpassing lightweight, it feels like at times, as far as the most talent stacked division in all of MMA. So no need to push this guy too fast, but I'm glad he had a main card spot here, and I mean, didn't get a finish, but dominated the entire fight.
Yep.
Zabit, what's going on, man? Come on.
I know. We got to see him. The beard's still there. The hair's still there. He looks the same.
He looks the same. Come on, man. Come back. Come home. Come home.
Please.
Ending here with ONE FC, full circle. Vitaly Bigdash in the trilogy fight. He gets the nod over Anglasang via unanimous decision. Not a ton of takeaways here. It was a pretty one-sided showing, I would say, for Vitaly. And I think I had more, obviously we came into this trilogy that fans of ONE FC have been very invested in for a long time. We came into it late. This is the first fight we got to see live of the 3. I know the second fight is like this, highly regarded fight in ONE's history. Here, it wasn't that kind of fight. It did, but at the end, you did kind of feel the moment a bit. Like, it felt like the end of an era. You got the 10-year anniversary card coming up and at the end of the month, so it's like, it feels like a lot of pieces are in play for like the next era, the next decade of ONE FC. I don't know if you have any thoughts specifically about either of these two, but it seems like for Ang Lasanga, just the best days are behind him at this point.
Yeah, that's what it felt like, and it was just to cap off that trilogy. We now have Big Dash, 2-1, right? It was 1-1 going into that. So, and he just implemented his grappling, and Lasong had no answers for it really throughout the whole fight. It was fun while it was on the feet, but for the most part, like you said, uneventful. But just a nice cap off. Two veterans that have been doing it a long time. It felt right.
And that's going to wrap it up for this weekend recap edition. Let us know your thoughts on all the fights that took place over the weekend. And Dominic, we got a pretty big week ahead.
Oh yes,
because it's
yes,
all dedicated. There's no, there ain't no
Nothing.
3-4 cards. I mean, it is all UFC 272. Masvidal versus Covington. It's coming up Saturday, so we're gonna have the weekend preview for that card on Thursday. Excuse me.
Yeah.
And then Friday we're gonna have the nosebleeds for that card as well. I'm still looking for that bounce back, but Dominic's still pushing along.
I'm trying.
Also, Friday PFL Challenger Series women's lightweight division. We'll talk about on the Sunday recap. Will Dominic spend the $64.99 on Fubo? I don't think so. But
Probably not.
But until then, Dominic, that's going to wrap it up here. I'm Noah Baker. That's Dominic Slee. We're the Below Average Joe's MMA podcast, and we'll see y'all on Thursday.
Damn right.